So it's time for the 52nd World Football Phone-In of the year, the last one of the year. It's America North and South this morning. Sean Wheelock is in Kansas to take care of any of your questions and comments on football, in Major League Soccer football, or indeed on players from over there playing in our leagues. And Tim Vickery is in Rio as ever to answer your questions, to take your comments on football in South America and players from over there playing with us. Gentlemen, good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Tim. Good morning, Dutton.
And the last one of the year. Hey, we got here finally.
We're going out in style. So bring the questions, bring the comments. And one thing I definitely want to hear from our audience, especially Arsenal supporters, David Beckham is going to be training with Arsenal in January. Would an Arsenal supporter like to see the former England captain back in the Premiership with Arsenal? I think I know the answer to that, but I'm going to throw it out to our listeners, Arsenal and non-Arsenal supporters alike.
And what about Chelsea supporters? They might want to know whether Shevchenko is coming your way in the January transfer window.
Dutton, this rumor continues to persist. Now, obviously, Andrei Shevchenko hitting a little better form. He just had the 2 goals in that brilliant 4-4 draw versus Aston Villa. I saw that match live on American television, and I say brilliant from a neutral perspective. Normally, I don't like seeing 8 goals in top-level football, but that was a fun match. Despite those 2 goals, though, I think Shevchenko is probably on his way out at Chelsea. The question is, does he go back to Italy, or does he come to Major League Soccer? Remember, he has an American wife, and he's being linked strongly to David Beckham's club, Los Angeles Galaxy, and also to Juan Pablo Angel's club, New York Red Bulls.
And Tim, staying with the American theme, Gavin in Bristol, Rhode Island, USA, wants to know whether you've heard anything about a 12-year-old Brazilian at the Santos club called Jean Chara. Apparently, he's the next coming of Maradona. Now, how many times have you heard that?
Yeah, this is also known as Anderson, another Anderson, Checker. Who's now I think he's kind of 14. He's been in the youth ranks with Santos for a while, and first came to prominence when he was 9 years old. 9 years old, you know, it's not the age I think that you want to be putting the pressures of a brilliant future in professional football on a kid, because in South American football so often that means, you know, he's supporting the hopes and dreams of not just himself, but his entire family as well, you know, extended family. They're all thinking, yeah, he's going to be able to buy me a fridge and a house or something like that. So I think it's just so really unfair to start putting pressure because of a fabulous video that circulated when he was 9. I think he's now around the 14 mark. So, you know, with under 15 tournaments and under 17 tournaments and so on, in the next 2 years, we should start seeing something from him.
Incidentally, good news for everybody, you know, that Adebayor of Arsenal may not be the last Adebayor in the Premiership, because my 13-year-old nephew has just secured trials at Chelsea now. What can I say? Who knows? We'll hold it for the future. I don't want to jump the gun just now, but if you'd like to throw any questions or comments to me about him, I'll be willing to answer them if I can. Okay, remember, it's America North and South, and on players from over there playing in our leagues as well. Cleo in Aldershot, as you've done so many times already this year, here to kick off the World Football Phone-In. Cleo, good morning.
Good morning, Dutton. Good morning, Tim. Good morning, Sean.
Hi, Cleo.
Sean, yes, Beckham has got a house near Colney Yard training thing, so he's going to train with us, but I can't see him stopping. No, I think
Cleo, I agree with you. Please continue. I'll just say I agree with you. Despite these rumors that are circulating, and Arsene Wenger has confirmed that David Beckham is going to train with Arsenal in the month of January, he is not going to go to Arsenal. He is not leaving Los Angeles Galaxy.
No. I've got a question for both of you, actually. For Tim, it's about the new Boca Juniors coach. But for Sean, the new New York Red Bulls coach, he spent 5 years as assistant manager at Man City. I don't know if a lot of people know that. He brought some very good methods in there, some training methods, and he was well received. But he's now gone back, well, to his wife's hometown, so to speak, because Juliet, I believe she comes from New York. But for the New York Red Bulls, I think it's going to be a real good thing for them, because, I mean, they've had the last couple of managers. I know they've had Bruce Arena and they've had a couple of others who haven't quite matched up, and they're expecting big things. How's it been received over in the press over there?
Extremely well. Juan Carlos Osorio is a Colombian. He does have a history in both Major League Soccer and in the Premiership, as you were rightly stating, Cleo. He comes to New York from Chicago Fire, and oftentimes I think it's difficult for a manager to come in and make an immediate impact, to get 10 or 15% more effort out of his footballers, and that's what Juan Carlos Osorio did at Chicago Fire. He took what I thought was a pretty poor club and made them a pretty good club. I thought he was absolutely brilliant when he joined the club in August, and I think he'll do quite well at New York. It's interesting because Jose Mourinho was starting to be whispered around very high-level people in Major League Soccer as, oh, Mourinho's going to come in, he's going to take the job. I was somewhat dubious of that. I didn't quite see it. So they went down a little bit from Mourinho, at least in terms of profile, but Juan Carlos Osorio will do very, very well. He was at a club that Tim Vickery has seen many times, a huge club in Colombia, although they've fallen on some hard times, Millonarios. I met Osorio a week into his spell last summer at Chicago Fire, and rarely have I been so impressed just talking football with someone. Even though English is his second language, he's a native Spanish speaker. He was so eloquent, so articulate that I thought, this is someone that if I played football, I would like him to be my manager, and I think he will do very well. Don't be surprised now if it's not Andrei Shevchenko, but there is going to be a big, and I mean a big name transfer, close to David Beckham level big. New York Red Bulls is going to try to bring in this January transfer window. They want to find a partner up top with Juan Pablo Angel, and they have that brilliant 18-year-old Josie Altidore. It's going to be a very good club.
And for Tim, about the new Boca Juniors, he's got a lot of pressure in the new coach. They've had coach a year for the last 3 years, haven't they?
Well, and the first thing to comment on this is the surprise, perhaps, that the other fella has gone, Miguel Angel Russo, who led them to the Copa Libertadores and to the final of the World Club Cup, which they lost 4-2 to Milan. New president of Boca, obviously keen to establish his own profile. And they did something with him which is becoming a habit in Argentinian football. They said that, well, we'll renew your contract, but you have to get rid of your backup staff. And that puts him in such a horrible position, and he decided to walk. So the man who's come in is Carlos Ischia. Now, Ischia has history at Boca, but not as the coach, as the assistant to a Boca legend called Carlos Bianchi. Now, Bianchi has led them to many, many titles.
They did try and get him, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. But Bianchi, he's got those kind of white tufts of hair and looks like an academic. He looks a lot like, I think, is it Professor Pitstop out of the Wacky Races? And his coaching career seems to have come to something of a full stop at the moment because he just doesn't want to do any work. He's tried Europe a couple of times and hasn't been successful, the last time with Atletico Madrid. And after that, he seems quite happy being a kind of house husband and pottering around. At the moment, he doesn't want to work. Although the door is open for him to come back. And Ischia, who was his assistant in a very successful spell at Boca, Ischia himself is saying when he takes over, he's saying if this means that Bianchi will come back in a few months' time, I'm quite happy with that. So perhaps Ischia starts off a little bit undermined, really, from this statement that he's just made, because he's almost like a stalking horse for Bianchi. You know, if things don't go well, and if they don't win the Libertadores in 6 months' time, either Bianchi comes back and takes over, or Ischia has to walk because perhaps he's undermined himself by not really disengaging himself from his past as Bianchi's assistant. It can be difficult for coaches to step up from the number 2 position to the number 1 position. I think they're very, very difficult posts. So indeed, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of pressure on him.
Is Ronaldo going to Flamengo? I'll be quick and cheeky.
This is a big one. And Flamengo, the big club in Rio, Ronaldo grew up supporting them. Ronaldo has said all the time during his career, he said that he wants to play for Flamengo one day. You know, he used to go and support them at the Maracanã when he was a kid. And Flamengo have qualified for the Libertadores, South America's Champions League. So they're saying that they will pull out all of the stops.
Ronaldo's dad's been talking big about him going there as well.
Yeah, but is it going to happen? Should it happen? And from both sides. And because from Ronaldo's point of view, and Brazil can be very, very cruel with its idols. Ever since Carmen Miranda, Brazil has been really cruel on idols that go abroad. And she was practically crucified when she came back to the United States after becoming a big star there.
His fitness levels aren't that, you know, he's...
Well, this is the problem. And if Ronaldo were to come back and not live up to the expectations, then he'd quickly find the Flamengo fans would turn against him. Now, from the point of view of the club, this is being attacked in the Brazilian media as an attack of megalomania, because Ronaldo, a fantastic player, no one in the history of football has scored more World Cup goals than Ronaldo. You can take nothing away from him. But year after year after year, he doesn't seem fit to play 3 or 4 consecutive games. He's played 1 game so far in this Italian season. So for a South American club, if they make a big money signing, you want that big money player out on the field performing every week, week in, week out. Ronaldo doesn't bring those guarantees at all. So I tend to see it as a high-risk move if it does go through, from both the point of view of Ronaldo, because if it doesn't work out, people will really turn against him, and the point of view of the club, because they could be spending money on effectively a lame duck centre forward. So I think it's a very, very high-risk move.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you, boys.
Yeah, happy New Year, Claire. Thanks a lot for the call. 0500 909 693. And incidentally, on those questions, for Arsenal, Becker would not get in the team, says Simon. And Abe in Broccoli says, Dawson, tell Tim we Gooners are not as starstruck as the Yanks. Beckham has always been an overhyped, one-dimensional player, not Arsenal class. Mick in Lewisham, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for taking my call, Dawson. I like the Arsenal fan. She sounds ever so pleasant. I thought I'd be on first for once. She just put me to the post. Anyway,
Never mind, you're on second, earlier than usual.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Well, Goalissimo's just started on Channel 4, so I don't want to get sidetracked. Anyway, they keep... Anyway, I'm going to be sensible this week. I've got a question for Sean, and I've got a quiz question for Tim. Shall I see if I can test Tim out first? Tim,
go on.
Okay, in the 1982 World Cup, Tim... Who said about Serginho, when Serginho plays, the ball is square? Which coach said that?
I think it was the former Brazil coach, João Saldanha.
Yes, I should have known. All right, what about this one then?
That's why they call him the Legendino. You can't catch him out this early on a Saturday morning.
All right, very quick one then. We all know about the Brazilian player nicknamed the Seal, okay? This is kind of animal-related theme. But in the 1978 World Cup, Tim, which Argentinian player was nicknamed the Duck?
The goalkeeper, Fiz.
Yes. Not
Mick, this is not a quiz programme.
What's his full name?
Give you 2 shots.
Ubaldo Fijol.
Ubaldo Matildo.
Mick,
sorry.
Rest your case. Just ask you on the question now.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. Well, at least I didn't do what I did last week. Okay.
That Graham Taylor impression was terrific. I thought it was a great... That was the best Graham... I once played a five-a-side where we could only communicate to each other using words from that Graham Taylor documentary. We could only say, hit Les, and other stuff like that. And, despite all that practice we had, our Graham Taylor impressions were nowhere near as good as yours. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Well, not too bad considering Dot now let me get through a quarter of my little scripts I wrote out. Anyway, Sean, thank you for your patience. I heard on Parkinson the other day, this is a chat show over here, that Beckham reckons he's got about 2 or 3 years left playing-wise, and I thought his contract was for 5 years. So does that mean his contract includes coaching or anything else?
Absolutely not. I wonder if he was saying that tongue-in-cheek, if he was serious. That's a real public relations gaffe if David Beckham said that and meant to say it. I don't doubt that he said that if he meant to say that. David Beckham obviously sometimes struggles with a microphone more so than he does with a cross or a direct free kick.
Yeah.
It's a 5-year contract. 1 year has been completed. It wasn't much of a year, obviously. He joined the club in late July and then, of course, was beset with all of the injuries. But he still has a full 4 years left on the contract. You know, it's so interesting, as I was thinking about just before the program, training with Arsenal because of the closed season of Major League Soccer. And I think a lot of people don't fully realize that Major League Soccer is not on the FIFA calendar. It's not like the Premiership or most football leagues in the world where you play through the winter and you're off in the summer. It's the reverse calendar. Los Angeles Galaxy last played a meaningful match October 21st. They've had friendlies since then, including in New Zealand and Australia, but October 21st was their last league match. They will not play another league match until the new campaign begins March 29th. That's October 21st to March 29th without playing a non-friendly league match. Obviously, he could have some England matches in there and already has, but that is a long off season
Lots of comments on Beckham. You know, Sean, Beckham wouldn't get in the United team now, says one. I think Beckham meant 2 or 3 years for England, says Simon, which again seems unbelievable. And Jim in Melbourne says, I saw Tim on The Real Football Factories. He was fabulous, giving me his own TV show. He also answered my questions on his BBC column. Legend, it says. And one for you, Sean, from Jade, who I think you know very well, United States-wise, who says, I welcome David Beckham returning to the Premiership after his free kick sent DC United home from the Super League semi-finals. I'd like him to go far away. DC would have beat Pachuca?
Pachuca, that's right.
Yeah, LA couldn't beat its way out of a wet paper bag. Also, you were wrong about Beckham coming to Major League Soccer. Could it also be that you're wrong that Shevchenko would go to LA Galaxy or Red Bulls New York, and that he instead would come to play for DC United? His wife was the reason he moved to the Premiership from Italy, and likewise would be a factor in a move to the USA. Don't you think she'd be interested in him playing in the city near where her family is?
No, I think that if Andrei Shevchenko comes to Major League Soccer, it's between those two clubs, Los Angeles Galaxy and New York Red Bulls. She is an American. She's a beautiful woman, actually. I had a chance to see her in Los Angeles.
What's that got to do with anything?
I just thought I would throw a little color
well, thank
out
you
the
very
program.
much. I appreciate it.
She's a model, and I would say if you're over the age of 18, do a Google search on her and be very careful who's in the room, because she's that type of model, or at least she was in her life. But it's very possible, because he has an American wife. I know that they were very happy when they were over training with Chelsea for those 2.5 weeks in July. They had a great time in Los Angeles. It's unfortunate in Major League Soccer because so many times the big footballers see it as two clubs. I'll either go to Los Angeles Galaxy or New York Red Bulls. It would be wonderful to see Andrei Shevchenko go to, say, Kansas City Wizards or FC Dallas, but if he does come, it'll be one of those two clubs.
Tim Vickery is superb. He should be prime time. Any word on what Ivan Guerrero, the Honduran who used to be at Coventry, is up to? That's from Jack?
No, that's Sean's patch.
Ah, right. Okay, so it should be Sean Wheelock is superb. He should be prime time. Any word on what Ivan Guerrero, the Honduran, he used to be at Coventry, is up to? Cheers,
I'll hold
Jack.
it till after news and sport as I hear the music.
Good morning. It's our World Football phone-in, as ever. Tim Vickery is in Rio to answer all your questions and take your comments on football from South America and indeed on players from over there playing in our leagues. And Sean Wheelock is in Kansas taking care of all things to do with Major League Soccer and indeed the CONCACAF region. So that includes the Central American and Caribbean islands too. Any questions or comments for him on footballers from over there or them from over there playing in our leagues, then feel free. You were going to ask a question on Honduras, weren't you, Sean?
Well, we were talking about Ivan Guerrero, and it's a long answer because I'm not very short. Although Tim Vickery, my good friend, is the only person who makes me look brief. I just thought that I would throw that in, but I knew we were up against news and sport. And Tim, I say that with the greatest of affection. Dot, and I know that you're nodding and smiling.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Ivan Guerrero has spent the last 3 years playing in the American top flight Major League Soccer with the club Chicago Fire. We were talking, Cleo's question about Juan Carlos Osorio, the new manager of New York Red Bulls. That was his manager for the last half of last season. He's now moved to San Jose Earthquakes, which will be a brand new club in Major League Soccer. A solid defender, one of the better defenders in Major League Soccer, but when I look at him, I don't think that he's a footballer. Just had the skill to stay in England, although he did have a spell at Coventry. It's so unusual for Central Americans, and I include Mexico in this, for Central Americans to do well in English football at any level. It's almost, I think, and Tim, if you please jump in on this too, what South Americans faced in English football in the 70s and the 80s. I don't know if it's cultural, I don't know if it's the weather, I don't know if it's just getting the opportunity. But outside of Paulo Wanchope, or Wanchop as he's known in the UK, who's Costa Rican, the list of Central Americans who've succeeded in English football is about a list of one, Paulo Wanchope, that's it. And Guerrero had a spell at Coventry, but it just did not work out. Jared Borghetti, who's Mexico's all-time leading scorer at the international level for the Tricolores, obviously had a dismal time at Bolton. And that, I just think, reaffirms, I don't know if it's a stereotype or a misconception or a preconception, that Central American footballers, for whatever reason, just don't have the wherewithal to succeed in English footballer.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. Tony in Doncaster, good morning.
Yes, hello, morning, gentlemen.
Hiya.
I'm not, just two quick questions, Dotton. The first one, I'm not sure if it's for Tim or Sean. It's for, about an Arsenal player, Carlos Vela. He plays for Osasuna at the moment. I don't know, is he from Mexico or South America? I don't know if someone could tell me a bit about him, because I've seen a bit of the Spanish highlights and he looks pretty amazing.
Do you want to take it, Sean, or should I?
No, Tim, you go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to take it because he is Mexican. But I saw him on the way up, along with the fellow we just talked about, Giovanni Dos Santos, when Mexico won the World Under-17 Cup just over 2 years ago, and he was the top scorer there. And he was really taking advantage of the bullets that Dos Santos was firing. And I have to say, he impressed me enormously on that occasion. Enormously. Again, very quick. But knowing how to use his pace where it matters in the penalty area, getting in front of his marker, finishing very well in the air on his left foot as well. Now, since then, he's had considerable experience in Spain, and Arsenal weren't allowed to register him straight away, so he's been in Spain in the second division and now in the first division with Osasuna. He seems to be filling out physically, and I think he's a very, very interesting prospect indeed, who is picking up the experience, which I'm sure will be invaluable when he does eventually come into the Premiership. I think he really is an interesting prospect.
Yeah, they were showing the year's skills from La Liga, and they actually showed him more than Messi and stuff because he does the little flicks and stuff. I thought it was really amazing. And another quick one for you, Tim, about do you think Chelsea got the wrong player wires crossed about Pizarro and this Rocky Santa Cruz? Because I think if he was playing for Chelsea or mainly Chelsea because they like the big man up front, but he would. I mean, they won't even miss Drogba, would they? Because I think he's been amazing this season. Even you give him a chance and it's in back of the net.
He's having a fantastic time, isn't he? Scoring goals for fun. Was it something like 6 or 7 in the last 3 games?
Yeah, the match over there, he had 2 shots on target, 2 goals.
2 goals, yeah. My only rider, there are 2 doubts about him. Number one is his fitness. He's had real problems. He does have that beanpole physique, and he has continually broken down. And Blackburn seem to have done very well with him so far. He's had a little injury worry here and there. There was one that looked quite serious, but it only kept him out for a week or so. So that's doubt number one. Doubt number 2, I just wonder if he, temperamentally, if he's the type of player who's happier with a relatively small town club like Blackburn, and perhaps not so happy with a big town club. And his record at Bayern Munich is really not very good. Bayern picked him up in 1999. At that point, he was 17, but he was already leading the Paraguay attack, and he looked like an absolute global superstar. You were looking at him in 1999 as a 17-year-old, thinking this is going to be one of the top 3 strikers in the world in 3 years' time for 10 years. And he really looked the genuine article, because on all of the things that you're seeing for Blackburn now, he had devastating acceleration. He was terrific in the air. He could finish emphatically off either foot. His record at Bayern Munich from 1999 to 2007, so 8 years. His record is really quite poor, but they didn't get very much from him. And you just wonder, and some players are like that, the pressure of a big club doesn't bring out the best of him. Blackburn, smaller, more homely, may be, and that's where he's happiest. So there is that doubt about whether, if he was at Chelsea, whether he'd be quite as successful as he's clearly being at Blackburn.
Okay, smashing. Okay, Dotton, Sean and Tim, have a Happy New Year.
You too. Cheers. Thanks a lot, mate. Thanks a lot, Tony. Incidentally, for you, Sean, I hope, anyway, this is about Manchester City's new Mexican striker, Nery Castillo. Is he suited to the English game? Asked Carlos in Manchester, and also Jason in Manchester wants to know what kind of striker he'll be. Will he be a success in Man City?
I like Nery Castillo. He's very quick. Tim, I know you've had a chance to see him. He's very quick. He's fairly slight of build. If there were a Mexican striker that I thought would have succeeded in English football, it would have been Jared Borghetti at Bolton, because Borghetti is tall and he's strong and he can win aerial challenges and he's a natural-born finisher. And yet it worked out miserably for him. And I know that the Bolton supporters listening to this program know exactly what a disappointment that was. Castillo, though, was 10 years younger than Borghetti when Borghetti made that move. It's such a dilemma with top Mexican footballers, because the money in the top league of Mexico is outstanding. It's why that Mexicans have typically not left the home country. There have been a few notable exceptions. Rafael Marquez, the outstanding Barcelona defender who was first in France's Ligue 1. But for the most part, you're looking at over 95, maybe 98% of the international class Mexican footballers stay at home because they can make so much money. And it's easier for someone like a Nery Castillo or a Jared Borghetti to stay at home and play for one of the big clubs in Mexico and be the star and wear the captain's armband and take all of the set pieces and be guaranteed 90 minutes and make millions and millions of dollars than it is to go to another country and to try. I like Castillo. He's certainly has pace and he has technical skill. It's going to be a difficult transition for him.
And just to come in on that, and from a cultural point of view, I think Castillo is more Uruguayan than Mexican, and he was born in Mexico just because his father was playing there at the time, and he came up through the youth ranks in Uruguay. He's a product, really, much more a product of Uruguayan football than of Mexican football. I don't think he's ever played in Mexico. He made his career after leaving the youth ranks of Danubio in Uruguay, made his club career in Greece with Olympiacos. So I think he's culturally. I don't think he's afflicted with the same, perhaps whatever it is, lack of self-esteem or whatever it is that Sean's pointing out as a problem for Central Americans in European football. I don't think that's a problem for Castillo. He's schooled in Uruguayan football, which is well accustomed to triumphing in difficult circumstances. And again, to back up what Sean says, I have no doubt whatsoever about his pace, searing pace, lots of talent. I do have a little doubt about his temperament, and this I think is a big challenge for him, and it's a big year for him.
Yeah, we've had a couple of comments about your Central Americans comment there, Sean. Reggie in Bristol says Dwight Yorke and Ricardo Gardner are good examples of quote-unquote Central American players.
They're not, though.
Caribbean.
Ricardo,
technically.
Totally different. Ricardo Gardner is Jamaican. Dwight Yorke is from Trinidad and Tobago. He's from Scarborough, Tobago.
Well,
culturally, it's different. And for one thing, they're coming from a nation that's part of the English Commonwealth, or at least was at the time, and they have English as a first language. So culturally, it's completely different. It's like saying, well, you're from the Americas. Well, I'm from Kansas. And if somebody is from La Paz, Bolivia, it's totally different.
Okay, Abby the Cabbie in London, good morning.
Good morning, Dutton.
Good morning.
I swear on my children's life, if I was a woman, I would have gone for your voice. You have a lovely voice.
Abby, leave your children out of this. You go. I'm very well. You go ahead and just go ahead, mate.
I have a question for Tim. Actually, two questions. First, why? Call me ignorant, but why the Brazilian team they don't adopt the 4-2-4 anymore?
Well, in the World Cup last year, and I saw the coach then, Carlos Alberto Parreira, who's now coaching South Africa, but I saw him talking about the team just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he was saying that in the team that he picked for the 2006 World Cup was practically a 4-2-4 team. Because they had two big strikers. They had Ronaldo and Adriano with Ronaldinho and Kaká. And it didn't work. And Parreira said himself that he's not a fan of 4-2-4. He thinks that 4-2-4 is outdated. He thinks it leaves you too light in midfield. But from the characteristics of the four top players he had, almost forced his hand. So despite his philosophy, which was very much 4-4-2, he found himself picking a 4-2-4 team. Mario Zagallo, who coached the 1970 team, and the great 1970 team, now he took over just 3 months before that tournament. And Brazil were, at that time, under the previous coach, Val Saldanha, they were playing 4-2-4 with just 2 men in midfield and 2 wingers. And the first thing he did, now he'd been a left winger himself in his playing days, but the first thing he did, and I've spoken to him at length about this, he said to me, right, the first change I made was, no way are we playing 4-2-4. We were playing 4-2-4 when I was a player in 1958. Football has subsequently moved on, and the physical development of the game means that it's no longer feasible to just pick 2 players to cover all of that ground in the centre of midfield. Zagallo would see that side in 1970. He would see it as a 4-5-1 formation, because when Brazil lost possession of the ball, Tostão, the centre-forward, was the only person who stayed in front of the line of the ball. Pelé, who was a support striker, came back. He had an out-and-out right winger, Jairzinho, but Jairzinho would come back as well and help out the right back. The left winger was a false left winger, Rivelino. Rivelino wasn't a left winger; he was a central midfielder, but they put him on the left of midfield because of his immense talent. So I think the main answer to your question is of why they no longer play 4-2-4 is that they think that the physical development of the game means that it's no longer possible. You have to have more people there behind the line of the ball when the move breaks down. Otherwise, you can be taken apart on the counter-attack.
Another question for you, the last one. What do you see? I mean, the future of the Brazilian team under this Dunga. I mean, his football is not beautiful, is it?
No, it's not. I'm a little bit hopeful about this because I think the main reason that the Brazil team haven't given the spectacle over recent years is because they've changed the characteristics of the central midfielders. The central midfielders used to be the most artistic players. Gerson, Gigi, Toninho Cerezo and Falcao in 82. But what's happened over recent years is that I think Brazilian football has become almost like a hostage to the advance of the fullbacks. And in order to have the fullbacks pushing forward, the central midfielders have become just covering players. And at the moment, Gilberto Silva is a converted centre-back. It breaks my heart to watch him play for Brazil. A converted centre-back who can hardly pass the ball 20 yards. I know he's got his virtues, and I think he's a terrific bloke. But this is Brazil. You know, for Gilberto Silva and Mineiro to play centre of midfield for Brazil, I think is horrible. But that's the way that things have gone. But there are signs of a change. There are signs that perhaps we're going to see a little bit more artistry in the centre of midfield, where I see the football growing from. And one thing which is attracting huge interest in Brazil is the fact that Manchester United are picking Anderson in this position. No one in Brazilian football would ever have done this, but this is making people think, oh yeah, perhaps we can have a real talented player to play central midfield and get the ball, the move starting with more quality. I was also interested to see that in the elections for FIFA World Player of the Year, where the various international team coaches vote, Dunga voted for as his World Player of the Year. He couldn't vote for Brazilians. He voted for Pirlo of Milan in Italy. I think that's exactly the kind of player that Brazilian football has been missing. The kind of player who can orchestrate, who can pass from deep and orchestrate the play from deep. So the fact that Dunga is alert to this and rates Pirlo, I think is a good sign. There's a player coming through with the Sao Paulo club, a player called Hernandez, who's based his style a little bit on Pirlo. I think he was an important revelation from the Brazilian Championship. So I think there are optimistic signs. I'm an optimist anyway. I think there are signs that in the future, Brazil's style of play, as well as being effective, it might be a little bit prettier on the eye as well.
Thank you very much.
Abby, thanks a lot for the call.
and Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, if you notice, my voice has got a lot deeper. Thanks very much for the call, Abby.
You think Dotton's voice is nice? You should hear his wife's.
Hassan in Birmingham, good morning.
Oh, Tim, you make me laugh at the funny times in the morning.
Listen, I'm still laughing about last week's War and Peace, mate.
God. Well, Happy New Year's to all of you.
Happy New Year.
Cheers.
Thank you. Tim, I want to know more about Curlon. I know you said he was injured, but what's happening? I mean, I myself can't see, and my brother has been explaining to me the skills he does. I train with the England blind football team, and I just want to know what's happening to Curlon.
Oh, fantastic. You train with the England blind football team?
Yes, I do, yeah. I'm trying to get into the Great Britain Paralympic side.
Oh, fantastic, and best of luck with that. Well, Curlon, of course, is the player who's invented this seal dribble, where he flicks it up in the air and he can run with the ball at pace, changing directions while balancing the ball. He was injured. He suffered quite a serious knee injury, but he was back for the last 4 or 5 months of the Brazilian Championship for his club Cruzeiro, often coming off the bench. And at the moment, it's still not quite happening for him. And I think, to be honest, I think that this seal dribble has overshadowed the rest of his game a little bit. I think he feels under pressure to do it. And I remember when he first came through, it was the South American Under-17 Championships of 2005. Now, he was this is where he first revealed the seal dribble, but he was also top scorer of the championship. And there were all kinds of goals going in. There were free kicks bent around the wall. They were bursts behind the defence. There were the combination plays. There were shots from range. The whole gamut. You know, he was really doing everything. At the moment, he still hasn't scored a senior goal in the Brazilian Championship for Cruzeiro. And I just tend to think that this whole thing about the seal dribble is perhaps is perhaps overshadowing his career. I think maybe he needs to just let it drop for a little bit and concentrate on the basics, because there's a danger that he's going to end up as a kind of YouTube curiosity. And we're talking about a player who's going to be 20 next month. So, and the players in South American football, they're expected to mature quickly. I think it's harder for him because of all the fuss about this seal dribble that he's being expected to produce. So if I was him, I think I would just let it low profile for a little bit, concentrate on the basics, and then when he's established for the other facets of his all-round game, then look to unleash the seal dribble again.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I've heard some of his clips on YouTube. And Tim, who do you think is the next Ronaldo? That's my final question.
Without a doubt, it's a player who's at the same club as Ronaldo now. It's Alexandre Pato, who's a young striker, just turned 18, who Milan have picked up from Brazilian football, from Internacional of Brazil, who will be available for Milan now in the new year. And he's very reminiscent of the young Ronaldo, when Ronaldo was a skinny kid. He's got the same kind of movement and the same kind of cool in front of goal. He's a wonderfully cool finisher. With the added advantage, he's got a terrific leap, very, very good in the air. And I know that at Milan, just in training with what he's been doing, they're already raving about him and have big expectations about him. He really is the big hope as Brazil's long-term centre-forward, Alexandre Pato of Milan.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for that, guys.
Yeah, Hassan, thanks a lot, mate. And call anytime. Make sure you keep us up to date with your progress as well. This for you, Sean, from ZK, or ZK, as you Yanks would say, in Singapore, listening online. How likely is it that domestic football, great question, how likely is it that domestic football in the States will provide or continue to provide players good enough to be called up to the side to advance soccer in the US? Also, I watched an interview with Brian McBride yesterday and was wondering if you think he has a role in the game back in the States after his spell in England ends.
I'll take the Brian McBride question first, and then I'll get to the longer answer. Brian McBride absolutely does. He was a superstar in Major League Soccer. He was one of the first great goal scorers, was in Major League Soccer year one of the league in 1996. Wonderful international career, retired from international duty with the United States after World Cup 2006. Class all the way. Was wonderful in the Premiership. Still could be wonderful in the Premiership, although he certainly had a spate of injuries, including breaking his kneecap with Fulham earlier this campaign. Wonderful in Major League Soccer. He could come back. I think he could be a manager. He could be like the former U.S. international Lexi Lawless, who's president of Los Angeles Galaxy, be some type of official in Major League Soccer. I don't mean on the pitch official. I mean like a club official, like a president or a vice president. He could be a commentator. That's someone that you want to see in the game. It would be an absolute shame as Brian McBride gets out of competitive football into his 40s and 50s if he is not involved in the sport somehow. I absolutely think the world of Brian McBride, and I know anybody who's had any dealings with him in the Premiership, even if he's scored against your club, knows that he's a class footballer. In terms of the United States producing better footballers and better athletes, it's absolutely happening. I look at somebody like Landon Donovan or Josie Altidore, two outstanding Americans who play in Major League Soccer. Donovan for LA Galaxy, Altidore for New York Red Bulls, although I think Altidore is going to be in the Premiership in the next 18 months. I'm not so sure that 20 years ago athletes of that caliber would have been footballers. I think they would have been steered into other sports. America's population is almost 305 million, and even though football is still a minor sport, it's still a niche sport, it's growing, and it's growing incredibly. I love this stat. This is my favorite stat as a Yank who's in love with the game of football. Football is second only to basketball with youth participation for both boys and girls under the age of 14. That's more than baseball, more than American football, more than ice hockey. The key is to keep all of those little boys and girls who are kicking the football around on Saturday and Sunday afternoons in the park when they're 8 and 9 years old, to keep them involved into the game through the university level and into the professional level. I definitely think that the United States will win a World Cup. I don't think it's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 World Cups, but I certainly think that with the wealth of my country, with the population of my country, and as football continues to emerge, it's going to happen. As I've seen football grow, in 1990, when America qualified for the World Cup, and I'm not making this up, I would say that the vast majority of people in my country didn't even know what the World Cup was, and you probably would have been hard-pressed to find 1 out of 100 who could have told you that Bob Gansler was the manager of that side. Football continues to grow. It's still a minor sport, but it definitely continues to grow, and when I see the level of athletes that are coming into the game, game. It gives me great hope.
Matty in Liverpool wishes us all a happy new year and asks, have you heard any rumours of Messrs Hicks and Gillette getting ready to bail out from Liverpool? If anybody should know, you should, because you're the American legend. And as for the Legendino, no words are to be spoken, but hats tipped in praise. Sean?
Oh, I appreciate the comments very much. Thank you. No, Gillette and Hicks, despite the setbacks at Anfield, I think they're in this. If you're going to see an American get out sooner rather than later, it's probably, I think, going to be a Manchester United. I really believe that with the Glazer family. I'm not sure that you'll see them committed to Manchester United for 5 years or 10 years. Gillette and Hicks, I know they've both talked about wanting to get their sons involved. Both men have sons in their 30s, and I think that they want to hold on to that club for a long, long time. You never know in professional sport, including football. Someone comes in, they make a huge offer, and you sell. You see clubs that have been in families for generations in all sports. Someone writes a big check, and that's it. But I definitely think that they're going to be in this for some time, and I think they'll do their best to try to get some sort of new football ground. How that goes over in Liverpool is another question entirely.
From Nick in northwest London, what do the panel think of Alan Shearer's comments this Saturday, or last Saturday, that you don't win anything with pretty football? It's upset Arsene Wenger, who responded angrily to those comments. What's the American North and South view on pretty football? Is pretty seen as something extraneous to football as it is in England? Is this the problem with English football? And also, Dotton, please tell us where we can get hold of the I'm a Football Fan song. Well, we tried up and down all over the place. I'd suggest you try it on the net. Real Sounds of Africa, Football Fan. So, answering the question, Tim, first of all.
Yeah, I've only just seen this Alan Shearer quote, and it seems quite depressing to me. There's so much of the kind of... English football is a complex and contradictory beast.
So the actual quote was, you don't win anything with pretty football. You're not going to win the Premiership with pretty football. Well,
it also seems to me to be out of date, because maybe in the days when Alan Shearer was a player, the pitches in December, from December through to March were mud heaps. But now, when I look at the pitches, now they look terrific. I think the pitches have got so much better, and playing good football, I think, is because it used to be the case that the side that wins in August is not necessarily the side that's going to win the championship. Having said that, I always think that the great Liverpool sides of the late 70s and the early 80s. I think that they've been really, really underrated for just how good they were. And they were pretty sides to watch. They were passing sides who could impose their game in all conditions. I don't agree. As a South American point of view, well, it's interesting because there does seem to be a point of view in Brazilian football at the moment that there is some contradiction between playing well and winning. It's something which is very depressing. But the Brazilian players, after every World Cup match, they're always asked, where was the show? Where was the show? And they'll say, well, for us, winning is the show. We're not so interested in giving a show. We're interested in winning. As if there is a contradiction between playing good football and winning, which I don't think there is. There's a school in Argentinian football founded by Cesar Luis Minotti that if you want to win, the best way to win long term is to keep playing good football. And I'm with that all the way. And I can't see any reason why that shouldn't apply nowadays in the Premiership when the pitches are so much better than they were.
Sean?
I know that in the United States, oftentimes people don't want to see pretty football. A comment I've heard is why America is not developing the great goal scorers is because it's looked down upon. If you're 8 or 9 years old and you're trying to dribble through 4 defenders, you're probably going to get yelled at by your coach, and your coach probably has never played the game at a very high level. It's more about passing and teamwork and playing sound positionally. So I don't think that a lot of Americans, especially at the youth level, even if they don't fully understand why, they don't have any time for pretty football. If you watch the United States play and then you see Brazil play or even France, you just don't see that 1v1 skill with the United States, even though you see big, strong athletes, and positionally and organizationally they can be very, very good. So I think overall pretty football is just looked down upon. I wonder what Alan Shearer would say about Ruud Gullit now that he's, of course, openly talked about his sexy football coming to Los Angeles Galaxy. Maybe that's a question someone can pose to Alan Shearer.
Sean Wheelock is our legend in America, in Kansas, answering your questions on Major League Soccer. Tim Vickery is our legendino in Rio to take any questions and comments you might have on South American football and on players from over there playing in our leagues as well. Barry in Manchester wants to know, Tim, with all the abuse that fans are giving players currently, what are the fans like in South America when players or teams don't perform well?
Much, much worse. And the abuse is not just verbal. I mean, there are many cases of even like the players' coach being intercepted on the way back by their own supporters who beat them up. And the players in the Premiership, they perhaps don't realise how lucky they are with the support that they get, even when things are not going well. And the South American fans can really be vicious towards their own players.
And Sean, this is from Cal in Bournemouth, who wants to know whether Guyana, French Guyana and Suriname have national outfits. You never see them in South American qualifying.
No, it's very interesting because geographically they're in South America, but when I've talked to people from that nation, they tell me that culturally they think of themselves as Caribbean, and for whatever reason, they're actually part of CONCACAF, one of the two of the 35 members of CONCACAF, which is North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. We were talking earlier about Central America, and I guess from an American perspective, although I know a lot of Latinos don't like people from the U.S. to say they're Americans because they say the Americas, so it gets mixed, but essentially when I think of North America, I think of the United States and Canada. When I think about Central America, I think of Mexico and then the Central American nations that are part of the continent, like Honduras and Panama and El Salvador, Nicaragua. And then Caribbean are the island nations. But when you're talking about French Guiana and Suriname, it's very odd because, again, they think of themselves culturally, as I understand this, of the Caribbean. They qualify through CONCACAF, and yet geographically they're nestled into South America. Tim, have you ever heard of them joining CONMEBOL? Has that ever even been discussed? I mean, in fairness, they're very, very small footballing nations. They're always paired in the very first round of CONCACAF qualification and have a tough time just getting through to that second stage.
No, I think even geographically, I've never been to these places, but I'm told that even geographically it can be quite hard to get there from South America. And so, I think that they belong economically and whatever, but they belong to that Caribbean region, and that's where they play their football, and I think that's where they're going to continue to play their football.
David in Stratford, you wanted to ask about Pablo Coelho?
Yeah, I do indeed. Hello, Tim.
Hi.
I mean, apart from the fact that the only thing I knew about Coelho before was that he had actually knocked Ken off the ball so far. I think he knocked him off the pitch just about. And I think he got a 4-match ban.
It was originally 120 days, but I think it got reduced on appeal.
But, I mean, I'm not sure that any Brazilian player, defender anyway, can actually cut it in Scottish football.
He's a fullback, which in the terms of Brazilian football is perhaps more of an attacker than a defender. So that's one immediate problem that he faces. And quite often in this situation, when they come across as fullbacks, they end up playing wide midfield. You see that frequently with Brazilian players who come across to Europe. So that's one thing. He might well end up as a wide midfielder.
Because everyone wants a Cafu player or maybe a Roberto Carlos, but both of them are basically great getting forward, but they're not going to make too many tackles when people are coming behind you. So
yeah, I think some of that would apply to Coelho as well. He does strike the ball extremely well. He's quite well built. And if it does come through, an interesting move, and I think that there's something that he can contribute. But in Brazilian football, the fullbacks have become attackers. And the fullbacks have basically lost all conception of marking ability, really. And that's forced Brazilian teams to either play three centre-backs or play two purely defensive midfielders who hardly ever cross the halfway line. Now, the way that the British football interprets 4-4-2 is completely different. You almost get your kind of lines of four. You can see when the Brazil national squad is named, for example, it's not named as goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and strikers. It's named as goalkeepers, centre-backs, fullbacks, midfielders, and strikers. So fullbacks have become almost in a category of their own.
I think they try and actually play their team almost like what you'd call total football from the 70s that Holland and Ajax used to play. They try and do that, except they're bigger, stronger at the back.
So the consequence of this, and if he does play for Celtic, if he does play at fullback, then that means some adjustment there. That means, I would have thought, a central midfielder who's ready to cover the space. Otherwise, you're going to get the ball playing behind him, or playing wide right.
I'd love to see it. And by the way, when you talked about people curling the ball, though it breaks my heart to say it, Cubias 78 could hit a great dead ball.
David, thanks a lot for the call.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Sean, can you tell us anything about the New England Revolution's midfielder Andy Dorman, who's being linked to clubs in the Scottish Premier League? Ask Ronnie in Edinburgh.
Andy Dorman's a very good footballer. It was odd because he was automatic first choice in the midfield for New England Revolution, and he fell out of favor with manager Steve Nicol at the end of the campaign. And once it went to the playoff phase and New England reached the Major League Soccer championship match called the MLS Cup Final, they ultimately lost versus Houston Dynamo 2-1. He was nowhere to be found. Dorman was dropped, and I never quite got the full answer on that. I don't know if it was a row, but Dorman's a good, solid midfielder. I don't look at him and say that's someone who could go into Rangers and Celtic and be first choice or be a huge star. But he's English by birth. He was a schoolboys footballer in Wales, and there was some confusion in the U.S. Many people thought that he was Welsh, but he's actually English. When I see Andy Dorman, I think of someone as a good championship-level footballer, and I think that he could do well for a mid-table club in Scotland. I like him. I think he's got pace. I just don't think that he's anything absolutely brilliant. It would be a loss, though, for New England Revolution because he's been a nice fixture with the club.
Theo in London, good morning.
Good morning, Jed.
Hiya.
My question is for Tim. On a Sunday morning, I normally go down the Hackney Marshes. I don't know if Tim is familiar with those grounds.
Yes, I am.
And I go there, I'm involved in senior football. But next to the pitches on which we play, I also see lots of kids below the age of 10, maybe 8 or so. They have the organized football on those same pitches that the senior players play on. And they seem to be lost. I want to know, in Brazil and the American South continent, how is organized football for those kids coached, and is it played on the same pitches, those both wide pitches? I don't think it's a good idea.
No, I agree with you 100%. It's very, very rarely are they playing on those pitches. What there's been, especially in Brazil, over the past few years, is a real growth in indoor football, known as futsal, where you're getting the kids into a closed space, small-sided games, plenty of contact with the ball, terrific for one-against-one skills. That as in many cases, that's kind of replaced the kind of spontaneous street football that you used to see everywhere. You still see, but you don't see as much of the spontaneous street football as you used to, because of two factors. Number one is real estate speculation. The fact that the cities have grown. The 20th century has been a century of dramatic urbanization in South America. So lots of the kind of wasteland space that the likes of Maradona and so grew up on, lots of that has been filled over and buildings put up on top of it. So that's one reason. And the other reason is that the unfortunate fact that so many South American cities, the level of urban violence is totally unacceptable and growing. So it makes it more of an unsafe space. So you get them instead into a safe space, which is indoor football and futsal. So you see very, very little of on full-size pitches, full-size goals. There are versions of the game all over the continent, baby football or the kind of mini football with smaller, reduced team size, so there's more contact with the ball, reduced goal size, so it's not as easy to score a goal, reduced pitch size, so the players aren't so lost. So I tend to agree with you. I'm not a youth development specialist at all, like you seem to be, but the idea of putting 8 and 10-year-olds on a full-size pitch, I think for me that's not a good idea at all.
It just does not make sense, and I think it permeates all the way down to the English senior team, because if you don't have the kids playing those close-contact football, learning to keep the ball in small spaces, I mean, and this is the same coaches who go on to do the FA badge coaches, and they teach the same thing all the way through, which is why England, I think, will never win a World Cup.
Yeah, on a big pitch, if the pitch is way too big for the players, who is the player who stands out? He's the one who can kick the ball the farthest. No, not necessarily the one with the best technique. So it seems to be, I agree with you 100%. It means that the priorities are completely inverted, and perhaps that's one of the reasons that English football tends to produce more athletes than it does artists.
You've been listening to a download of the World Football Phone-In from Up All Night at BBC Radio 5 Live. You can put your questions live on Saturday mornings from 2:30am to 4am, or you can email us at upallnight, that's all one word, at bbc.co.uk. That's upallnight at bbc.co.uk.